welcome to the ESPN 1080 Insider Special FSU Miami preview. Eric Lopez here alongside Andrew Melnick, a Seminole graduate, a Seminole season ticket holder. He's normally a Magic insider, but they're locked out, so therefore he's more of a Seminole insider for today.
Yeah, why not?
That's the only job that's open right now. That's why. So Florida State and Miami, it's FSU Miami week. It doesn't get any better than this. Florida State right now 6-3. Miami coming off the win against Duke at 5-4. We'll be joined by Carlos Pineda shortly. But first, Andrew, your thoughts. FSU now coming into this game on a bit of a winning streak. Blew out Boston College, playing some good football.
Yeah, well, a couple things happened. Number one, most importantly, they got their quarterback back. E.J. Manuel came back second half of Wake Forest, played all right, and then has played really, really well since then. He's up to 12th nationally in passer rating. And to be fair, don't want to toot their horn too much because they've played Duke, Maryland, North Carolina State, and Boston College. It's not exactly murderer's row so far.
But they're blowing them out, which they haven't even done in the past.
Yeah, they are. They're blowing teams out. They're playing much, much better. I mean, Clint Trickett did a nice job when he came in, but E.J. Manuel makes a huge difference with this offense.
Devontae Freeman is getting better and better every week.
Yeah, he's been looking like the best running back since week 3 or 4, and they're finally giving him starters, carries, even getting James Wilder in there a little bit. Jermaine Thomas has played better, so they've really made up for the loss of their leading rusher last year, Chris Thompson, who broke his back against Wake Forest.
Florida State, of course, playing Miami. They're hosting them. The game is kickoff at 3:30, 1:30 pregame, a game you can hear right here on ESPN 1080, the home of the Seminoles. Andrew, what does this Miami week mean to a Florida State guy?
Well, this was it's lost its luster because both teams have gone downhill recently. But this was, in the 80s and early 90s, this was the premier game in college football every year. You probably saw highlights this week of, wide right 1, wide right 2. They played in 91. It was 1 versus 2. I mean, they've had a ton of games where they've been ranked in the top 10, a ton of national championship games. I mean, if it wasn't for Miami, Bobby Bowden probably have about 5 national titles.
So now let's bring in the Miami perspective. That was Andrew Melnick. He covers the University of Miami for Southern Pigskin. He's been at every Hurricane game. He will be in Tallahassee on Saturday. Carlos Pineda joining us. Carlos, your thoughts on Miami, Florida State week?
I think it's as best as it gets this season for both teams. It's a big game. Everyone's got it circled on their calendar. Not like the Florida State game, where that's more of a rivalry between the two teams. This has always been a national rivalry in the spotlight, like Andrew said. I mean, yesterday they kept referring to number ones versus number twos in Miami FSU. That wide right one kept coming up among the highlight packages. So it's a good game, and it's just to see these two teams all, getting a win the week before to sort of set it up as a better matchup instead of having had 1 or 2 lose the game a week before there.
Let's talk about the Hurricanes a little bit. It's been an up-and-down season, a roller coaster. You opened the year on a Labor Day night, losing a thriller to Maryland in the rain. You beat Ohio State, thumped them pretty good. You beat Georgia Tech this year. You've beaten North Carolina, but you've had some tough losses. A heartbreaker in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech. You lose on a Thursday night to Virginia.
Last second loss to Kansas State.
Which doesn't look that bad right now. Kansas State, the top 20 team. Give me your overall synopsis of the Hurricane season.
I think you're seeing Al Golden working with damaged goods from the previous coaching staff, and whether the losses showed or not, each week this team is improving and adjusting to the system that Golden and D'Onofrio on the defensive side are implementing. I mean, the offense has had a easier of the two with Jed Fish, getting the offense to adapt quicker. But you're seeing slight improvements. I mean, this is a team that hasn't been honestly that good in the past 4 or 5 years, and it shows. You still have players remaining, and they're trying to adjust, and sometimes it's not easy adjusting to a new staff when you've had 4 years or 3 years of a different coach's scheme in there. So I think they're improving, whether the record shows it or not, but it's a slow process, and I think yesterday was the game Miami wanted to obviously have against Virginia, having been well-rested for an extra 2 days since the game was on a Thursday night, but the defense played well. Offense was clicking on all cylinders. You had Miami scored on their first 5 possessions, and then that's the kind of team that Miami can be when the offense is running well and the defense is playing good enough to give the offense the possession more.
Yeah, unfortunately for Miami this week, Florida State's going to have that advantage. They played the Thursday night game, of course, against Boston College, so they get the extra 2 days to maybe get some more guys healthy. We saw them this week. They were without their center, Brian Stork, who had a concussion, had to throw in a true freshman, Austin Barron, who Carlos down there might be familiar with, another St. Thomas Aquinas player. They've actually got 3 starters that are freshmen from St. Thomas Aquinas this season. So that they had some trouble there. That's going to give them a little bit of an advantage to get healthy. On the injury front from Miami, what's going on with them? Who do they have coming back? Who's healthy there?
Really, other than the guys that are out for the season at this point, the only one that didn't play against Duke was John Feliciano, the offensive lineman, and he was probable. He missed the Virginia game due to an ankle injury, but I'm taking that he'll be back this week full strength. Saw him before the game yesterday warming up, and he didn't. There were no signs of the ankle hampering him down, so I can imagine he'll be back ready to go 100% against FSU. But that's pretty much it. Everyone else who's injured that's been out this season, they've been out, and everyone else has been out for the season at this point. But so there's really no one else other than Feliciano who we can see returning that's going to make an impact at this point.
This will be Al Golden's introduction to the Miami-FSU rivalry. What should FSU fans expect from Al Golden? Is he? What do you think that relationship will be like between the Seminole fans and Al Golden? Will he be a very hated guy? Will he be very liked? I think. No, I'm serious, Andrew, because there was like Jimmy Johnson was very hated by FSU fans. I think. Would you say? I think Butch Davis was not well liked after the 2000 game. I would say people love Randy Shannon.
They loved him last year.
Yeah.
They didn't like him 2 years ago, though.
No, they didn't. So give me your thoughts. Give the audience a thoughts on Al Golden. How he's doing.
Well, I mean, let's look at the style points. I mean, good hair. Jimmy had good hair.
Yeah.
And he dresses nice. So I don't know if FSU fans like the tie look. I mean, maybe they'll.
I can see some jokes being made on the tie.
I was going to say maybe FSU fans will rep, a garnet tie for this game, to kind of counter the Al Golden look, if you will, the Fear the Tie campaign that's going on down here. But I think he's a well-respected coach. I'm sorry, but any coach that can turn Temple around, a program that's been pretty dead for the past 30 years, I think you get respect because of the job he's done there. But, I mean, first game of this rivalry, hopefully it'll be the first of many for Al Golden here in Miami. You never know with what's going on with the pending NCAA sanctions and whatnot. But I think he'll be hated because he's a Miami coach, but he'll be respected because he brings a lot of good to the game. He's not arrogant. He's not one of those coaches that you love to hate him because he's a douche on the field and off the field. But I think he'll be hated because he's a Miami coach, but he'll be respected because he's a good coach overall.
You gotta love that word choice there, Carlos.
I can't think of anything else.
Do you have a T-shirt with the tie on it like we saw Michael Irvin wearing last Thursday?
Do I?
Yes.
No, I do not.
They got to get the media hooked up. They got to get the media hooked up there, down there. Come on.
I will say this. I will most likely be rocking a tie for my media attire on Saturday.
There you go.
I'm going to have to find you out and see this tie. While we're on the injury front for Florida State, we'll see about Brian Stork if he comes back at center. Austin Barron did a nice job filling him, but they're going to want Brian Stork against Miami D-line. And Rashad Green, the freshman who's been fantastic, should be back Saturday. He's got 457 yards, 6 touchdowns, second leading receiver, leader in touchdowns for Florida State. So that would be a big gain for them.
I got a question for both of you. This rivalry, very quietly, has been dominated by the road team. A home team hasn't won this game since 2005, the famous muff game where Miami muffed the field goal at the end. FSU won an ugly 10-7 game. FSU won in 06. Randy Shannon in his debut won in 07, 37-29.
Kirby Freeman versus Xavier Lee.
Oh, my Lord. That might have been the low point of the rivalry right there.
Was that game on ESPN? You at that point?
No, it was still EBC regional, though, I think it was. Then FSU won that rain game shootout in 08. Unbelievable wild game. And then you mentioned the Labor Day night in 09, Miami wins the shootout. Then last year, in a game that was hype, prime time, 2 top 10, FSU blew out Miami. But it's been the road team that has had success in this rivalry. Why is it? Carlos, we'll start with you.
That's a good question. I mean, I really don't know. I think it maybe the home team, too much pressure. Home fans are, expecting a big win, and maybe the road team has less of that to deal with. I just think both teams since I want to say maybe '04. It's just you haven't been consistent, and sometimes the road team is able to escape with a win just because neither team has really been that good, and there's been so many inconsistencies in the rivalry that reflect the inconsistencies in each team's seasons for the past 6 years, in my opinion. And I think that's why you're able to get away with these wins on the road, especially when Joe Campbell was no easy place to pick up a win. So I guess that's credit to Miami there.
I think part of the problem has been not even necessarily the problem. Is sometimes the better team has just won. I mean, we saw 2 years ago in Tallahassee when Miami won that shootout. Florida State was an absolute mess. I mean, they wound up basically forcing Bobby Bowden out of his job, a guy who had been there forever. So they were an absolute mess. And then last year we saw the same thing. Miami was a wreck last year. Florida State had their best season in forever, getting 10 wins. And we saw Miami, they wound up losing USF, firing their coach, then getting blown out by Notre Dame. I mean, they were a wreck last year. I think at least for the last probably the last 3 years, it's not necessarily been about the road team. It's just been about the better team winning the game.
Yeah. Let's talk some individual matchups now in this current season. Start at the quarterback. Ja'Cory Harris and E.J. Manuel, and Carlos Ja'Cory Harris, in a way, the FSU game has been, in a nutshell, a synopsis of his career. The highs and lows, the great game from '09, maybe his best game as a Hurricane, upsetting Florida State in Doak Campbell that night and Labor Day night, and then the low of last year.
Pretty good observation there. You're right. It is a microcosm of his career at Miami, coming in with so much hype from the Miami Northwestern team that had just won the state title, and first year splitting the time with Robert Marv, and then that FSU game back in '09, I think. It speaks so much because automatically I remember people talking about Heisman after that performance in Tallahassee, and midway through the season the team just fizzled out. But I think this year he's got a great coordinator and a head coach that believe in him. That there's a lot of confidence there, and you could tell by his play. He's only thrown, I believe, one interception since the Kansas State game, and he's got 16 touchdowns this season. Typical Ja'Cory Harris, pre-Al Golden, would have had more interceptions than touchdowns at least. And there's just a lot of there's a great relationship between Jet Fish and Ja'Cory, and a lot of trust. And I think that he never had that with Mark Whipple, and before that with Patrick Nix. I just think those coordinators were not good one-on-one with their players, and I think that's what Jet Fish, he's got a nice touch with that, where he can have a great relationship with Ja'Cory, and it just shows on the field. I mean, he's a different quarterback this season.
Patrick Nix, a former quarterback under Jimbo Fisher at Auburn. I like the little tie in there. For Florida State, they've been a completely different team. Like I said, the schedule got easier, but after E.J. Manuel went down against Oklahoma, he wasn't playing well in that game, to be fair, threw a bad interception, threw another one that maybe wasn't his fault, but still threw the pick, probably a pass he shouldn't have thrown. They lose to Clemson without him. He comes in against Wake Forest, plays okay, not great, probably shouldn't have been playing in the game at all. Since then, he's been very, very good. He's been what they expected, and he's the reason I think the running game has come around. They've switched a lot. They're running a lot of option now with E.J. Manuel, Devonta Freeman, and it's really helped that rushing offense because you saw them earlier in the year, Oklahoma, Clemson. Even those first two games against Cupcakes, they couldn't run the ball at all. They've ran the ball a little bit better now. They'll face a stiffer test than they have in a few weeks with Miami's defensive line, despite some of the injuries, like Marcus Fortson being out for the season, which, wow, that was a huge blow right after coming back from his suspension. So he's made a big difference for Florida State. Obviously, Ja'Cory Harris, not turning the ball over. When he doesn't turn the ball over, you're absolutely right. Miami wins games. Now, this year, they might not have as good a top-to-bottom talent as they have the last few years, despite better coaching. A lot of that has to do with injuries. Some of that has to do with losing guys like Leonard Hankerson, of course. But I think the big matchup in this game is going to center around a Miami wide receiver, and it's going to be how Florida State covers Tommy Streeter, I think, and Travis Benjamin, more so Tommy Streeter, because Florida State came in with a secondary, a ton of hype. I mean, they had everyone coming back. They had their top three corners coming back with Xavier Rhodes, Greg Reed, Mike Harris. Terrence Parks, Nick Moody came back at safety. Neither one of them has been very good. Nick Moody's been hurt. In fact, actually, their converted corner, LaMarcus Joyner, has been easily their best DB. So I think the big matchup is going to be how Florida State's DBs play. If they can play up to their talent level, up to the hype they got, or even close to it, I think they're going to win the game, and I think they're going to win it by double digits. If they don't, if they play like they've played a lot of this year, big mental gaps like they did losing to Oklahoma in a game-winning touchdown against the way they played against Clemson, Miami's going to be right there because they do have excellent wide receivers.
Carlos, what do you think about that? Talk about the Kings receivers going up against the Knowles secondary.
Oh, I agree totally with Andrew. I mean, you look at the Tommy Streeter. He's one of those players that didn't get those opportunities before, and now you're seeing the potential there and the growth of him as a receiver from game one, where he was catching every pass, against his body. Now he's actually, his progression, he's stretching out for the balls. He's no longer using his body to catch them, and then that just shows signs of his progress. And this year, it's been all about the underclassmen. I mean, I know Tommy's a junior, but he never really had the playing experience before this season. But you look at Alan Hearn as a sophomore. He came into the season with a lot of hype from Al Golden because his work ethic during the fall, amazing. He's one of those players that stepped up. And the only reason I think he's probably being quiet right now is because Tommy Streeter's taken over that spot right now. Then you have a freshman in Philip Dorsett. All these guys that haven't played before, really, are the ones making all the noise for the Hurricanes. And then, of course, you add Travis Benjamin, who is that speedy wideout that, you can find going down the sideline. And he is your X factor. But like Andrew said, Tommy Streeter is the key to this Miami offense. When he's having a great day, he doesn't have to have a lot of receptions. I mean, yesterday he had 4 catches, but they were 4 big catches. And I think this season he's had 13 catches of 25 or more yards. So that just shows the impact that he has. And he's one of Jacory's favorite targets these days. And I just believe that Tommy, he may have another great game in Tallahassee this weekend because he's got a lot of confidence and he's grown as a player. He went from a guy that everyone kept talking about, when is Tommy Streeter going to finally play up to his level? He had a lot of hype, I guess, if you will, coming into Miami when he was a senior at Miami Northwestern. So it's nice to see a humbled kid like Tommy Streeter finally stepping up into the spotlight and making the big receptions that he's made this season.
Yeah, and he's going to have to do it because one thing Florida State has this year, they've been disappointing, but their defensive line has been the best it's been since their glory days in the 90s. It's been fantastic. Bjorn Warner's been a machine. They got a bunch of tackles they rotate in. They have a preseason All-American with Brandon Jenkins, who's maybe been a little disappointing handling double teams, dropping back in coverage a little more. So it's going to be tough for Miami to run at all. I think it's going to be tough for Florida State to run also. I mean, they're playing possibly 2 true freshmen starting on their offensive line maybe. They've had trouble running all year. It's going to be tough for both teams. So it's going to come down to the passing game. Jacory Harris is going to have to make plays. Not sure if he can do that or not. We'll have to see. That's why I think we both agree this game does come down to Florida State secondary. If they play well, they win the game. They don't play well, Miami's going to be right there with a chance to, really, I don't know about save their season, but get one huge win that's going to make.
You could argue this is Miami's bowl game, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is more important for them. I mean, if you look at the way they've kind of fallen back a little bit in recruiting in the pack here behind Florida State and Florida, this is a game. I mean, this is a ton of kids from Florida going to be at this game for Florida State. This is their, they play Virginia the week after, so this is really their big recruiting weekend outside of that first Oklahoma game. So it's key. I mean, if Miami could get a win here, they could steal a kid or two or just impress the state as a whole. It's a big game in that regard.
No, it is.
I agree with you there. But, you talked about Jacory and making big plays, and whether if you break it down, yesterday Al Golden was just talking about throwing the ball away here, or when he senses pressure this season, unlike last year's where he stays in the pocket too long, he can scramble for a few yards here and there, and that's been the big key of that the change in Jacory. But again, like you talked about FSU's defensive line, we'll see if he has enough time to maybe scramble for 4 or 5 yards here, and if he has enough time to just throw the ball away when the pressure's coming.
Yeah, that's one problem. Miami's offensive line been a little disappointing. That's why I thought Miami had a chance to surprise some people. I really liked what they had up front on defense and offense. Obviously, with the suspensions, the injuries on the defensive line have kind of hurt them a lot there. And then the offensive line, it hasn't. I don't want to say it's been awful or bad. I mean, they've got a 1,000-yard rusher in Lamar Miller, as our producer is urging me to mention. Buckman did earlier. He's been fantastic. But they've been a little disappointing in that regard, and they can't be. They're going to have to play their best game of the year to win this game.
I think their one big key there, if you may, is Chantrell Henderson got the start yesterday, which Golden said he's finally taken off the training wheels because the previous, I think, 3 or 4 games, getting a few reps here and there, and finally yesterday was his big day, and coming back from back injury, he performed pretty well, so maybe that's the X factor on the offensive line for Miami is having Chantrell start, and maybe he can have an effect on that Florida State defensive line.
That's Carlos Pineda, Southern Pigskin, covers the Miami Hurricanes. Andrew Melnick, of course. Eric Lopez here. This is the ESPN 1080 Insider Special FSU Miami preview. Of course, Florida State Miami from Doak Campbell Stadium. 3:30 kickoff on Saturday. 1:30 pregame. You can hear it right here on ESPN 1080, the home of FSU football. Give me your guys' thoughts. We've hit up on some of the keys games. Let's talk about, of course, when FSU Miami was in the glory days. Special teams was obviously very highlighted. We saw on Saturday night Alabama lose the game in a lot of ways because of their field goal kicking game. Give me both your thoughts on the special teams for Miami and Florida State as we head into this game.
Well, I think if you're Florida State, you got to be the happiest you've been in years. I mean, their kickoff coverage team has been fantastic. Jimbo's a guy who believes in playing starters. I mean, we see guys like Nigel Bradham on the kickoff team. They have an excellent kicker, one of the best in the country, Dustin Hopkins. Their punter is a 3.5, I guess I'll say. Split some punts with Graham Gano's freshman year. Senior in Sean Powell, who's been good. They've got Greg Reed returning kicks, Greg Reed returning punts, now Carlos Williams returning kicks. He's done a decent job. They haven't broke one yet. Rashad Green broke one that got called back. But their special teams is the best it's been in Tallahassee in quite some time.
Big for Miami's side, big improvement as well. Jake Whiteclaw, newcomer, comes in and he's had a phenomenal season this year. And the kickoff coverage has been great too. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard of a linebacker by the name of Denzel Perriman, freshman, but he may be playing a lot more defense lately. But he got to start with special teams, and he's one of those powerful guys that is able to stop the opposition inside their own 20 a lot of times this season. I think this is the best Miami kickoff coverage I've seen in a while. Usually the opposition will be able to, break some big runs, but not too many this season under Al Golden there. As far as kickoff returns, Travis Benjamin, always dangerous. I think there was two specific plays, one against Georgia Tech 2 weeks ago, where if he doesn't return a kickoff maybe to the Georgia Tech 45, Miami takes a knee and goes into halftime up 14-7, but instead he gets a big enough return that Miami's able to score a touchdown and get a bigger lead going into the break, which was pretty big in that game because the offense struggled to score whatsoever. So those are the kind of impacts that the kickoff return team can have for the Miami offense if the offense happens to find itself struggling to get the ball rolling. Punt return, again, Travis Benjamin, he's made some pretty good returns there, so he's a seasoned veteran when it comes to that. Punting, Dalton Bach, very impressive this season. There was a point maybe 2 weeks ago where Al Golden wanted to challenge him a bit, and he made it public that Jake Whiteclaw may be punting for the Hurricanes because Bach had a not-so-good game against North Carolina, but I guess once you get challenged, he came up big, and he hasn't lost his starting spot. So I think those are two big improvements for Miami, and replacing Matt Bosher was no easy feat, but I think Jake Whiteclaw has been doing a good enough job this season to give Miami a good chance if it comes down to a kick.
Give me your guys' thoughts on the state of the programs. Where's Miami and Florida State at right now? Where do you see them in a few years? Can they get back close to the top of college football landscape? FSU this year had the hype, was a top 5 preseason, fell on hard times, losing 3 in a row to Oklahoma, at Clemson, at Wake Forest. As it turns out, Wake Forest is not as bad as people thought. They're 5-4. At Clemson was a top 10 team. Of course, Oklahoma is a very talented team, but yeah, nonetheless, a bit of a disappointment. FSU is not going to not going to win the ACC, and Miami has yet to play for an ACC title. They're in rebuilding mode. Of course, they have the off-the-field issues there. It was well documented before the season. Just give me your guys' random thoughts on the programs, where they're at, and where it's going.
Well, I think Florida State's probably in a little bit better of a place right now for a couple simple reasons. Number one, Jimbo Fisher's been in the program for 5 years. He didn't get to do things his way until last season when he took over, but he's been in the program longer. So I think Miami, the way they kind of I don't want to say completely ignored, but the way Randy Shannon kind of had some trouble keeping guys home at the end, Al Golden's kind of got to repair those relationships with Miami, whereas Jimbo Fisher and his staff already have good relationships. So I think Miami's got a little more work to do, if not for any other reason than that Al Golden's only been there a couple months.
I agree with Andrew. I think the fact that Jimbo was the offensive coordinator during Bobby Bowden's last few years and the head coach in waiting, he already has a pipeline and familiarity in the state where Al Golden has to replace what Randy Shannon didn't do, and recruit some of the major local high schools. Sort of ignored them a bit there. But I think Al Golden, people are buying into the system. I know a lot of Miami fans are not too thrilled with the record, but you have to look at the previous years and say, okay, this team has been mediocre at best. What did you expect in year one of a new tenure? It just doesn't. You can't fix it overnight. It's a problem it's an internal problem that needs to be fixed, and it takes a couple of seasons to do so. I think Al Golden is proving that he knows what he's doing. He's an X's and O's coach, but he's also good with the players off the field. He majored in psychology for a reason. He can motivate these guys, and you see some of these results against Georgia Tech. And I don't want to be mean to Duke, but they did beat Duke convincingly, even though they're Duke. But I think he's doing a good enough job that people are interested to see Miami moving forward. I know the NCAA investigation has a cloud over Miami right now, but I think Miami hired the perfect guy for the job that could turn it all around, sort of like Butch Davis when he was hired back in 1995 to bring Miami back to the top there after the probation hit them, the Dennis Erickson administration. But I think Al is the guy, and he's proven a lot so far, even though the record doesn't show it.
I think that's one of the probably misconceptions nationally is people think, the right coach steps into Miami. They're Miami. They've won 5 titles. They've, dominated college football in, early 2000s, in the 80s, even part in the 90s. So I think people think, they get the right guy. He's going to step in, immediately turn around. I think they underestimated the kind of mess this whole program got themselves into the last couple of years. I don't think they know how tough of a job this is. I mean, especially coinciding with, of course not this year, not last year, but how good Florida's been, how Florida State's now got the hot name nationally in recruiting. And even teams here like UCF and USF that are recruiting a little bit better down in Miami and posing more of a challenge, I think people don't realize how tough of a job this is, and it's going to take a while. I mean, there's not going to be immediate results. I'm not even sure if you're going to see results next year. You might see some improvement, but I think for Miami to get back to where they want to be, this is a job that is going to take a few years for any coach.
Right, and he showed his patience at Temple, and I think that's what makes him such a great option for this team, because some of the writers down here have said what Randy Shannon did was set the program back 5-6 years with the way things went down under his tenure, his 4 years here. So I agree with Andrew. It's not a job that you're going to fix within a year or two. I think it's going to take multiple seasons just to see them going in the right direction before you even see them even in the talks for a national championship, which right now is nowhere to be found.
But can Hurricane fans be patient with that? Can they deal with that?
No, Eric, you live down here. This is a pro town.
Yeah.
It's got that pro town mentality. Win now or lose fans. That's just the approach down here. This isn't a college town that supports the team. Fans will be loyal. That means they may not show up, but they'll be loyal. But they want to see results, and I think winning 5 championships in 25 years sort of spoils you with that.
What about Florida State, Andrew? The window's a little smaller, right? They need to win. They get to obviously win the ACC, BCS win the next couple of years, isn't it? Is there more pressure in Jimbo from that standpoint?
I think there should be. There's, I know how Clemson was. They should have won this. They should have won the conference this year. I mean, this is the most talented team in the conference. I know what Clemson's done. They don't play defense like Florida State. They, I know maybe there's some excuse with E.J. Manuel being hurt, but they should have won their conference this year. They have the most talented team, and if they don't win it next year, there might be some trouble. Now, Jimbo can make himself look real, real nice if they win these last 3 games, because he's going to be 4-0 against Miami and Florida if that's the case.
So it's a quicker hook for Florida State. That's going to be interesting how these two programs kind of go from here. All right, guys, moment of truth. Give me a couple keys to the game for the audience to look forward to on Saturday. Carlos, would start from your side. What are a couple keys for Miami to win this game on Saturday?
The biggest key and in this rivalry was who rushes the ball more, and that falls on Lamar Miller and Mike James. Lamar Miller, as David pointed out, 1,000 yards yesterday. Had 147 in the game. I think if Lamar Miller can get into a zone early, into a groove, if the O-line can give him some holes, he'll be great. I know his trouble in the past 3 games prior to yesterday was he had happy feet. He was waiting for a hole to open up instead of being aggressive enough. If he can control that, be aggressive, and not be impatient, I think he'll have a great game. Having a running game opens up the passing game for Jacory to air the ball out to Tommy, to Alan Hearns, to Philip Dorsett and Travis Benjamin. It all starts with the running game for Miami. That's your bread and butter, and once that goes into work, you can open up the passing game, and if that happens, Miami should have a great game offensively.
I think Miami's going to have to be able to throw the ball because running has been quite a chore against Florida State. No one's really been able to do it all year. I think they're up to 3rd against the run. They're in the top 10 in total defense now. I believe they scooted way up yesterday, or this weekend with another good performance. So for me, I mentioned it earlier, it's going to be Florida State's secondary. If they don't play well, Miami's going to be in the game. It's going to go down to the wire like a normal Florida State-Miami game. If the secondary plays well, I like Florida State to win fairly comfortably.
Carlos, what do you think? Close game?
I think it'll be close. I think. Are we doing predictions now?
Sure. Yeah. Moment of truth.
I'm going to go with the team I cover here. I'm going to have to go with Miami 31-27.
So the road team's success continues by your pick.
I guess so.
Beautiful. All right, Carlos, tell the audience what they can expect from you on Southern Pigskin this week as you'll be going up to Tallahassee for the Miami FSU game. What kind of content can they expect?
We'll have some notebooks, maybe a feature or two on a couple of the players that have been an integral part of the success, of when this team is successful, let me say. We'll have a preview. I'm going to try and do a Q&A with Orlando Sentinel FSU beat writer Coley Harvey, some video interviews, and we'll do some stuff from the stadium. So we'll provide some great content for the viewers at Southern Pigskin.
And you'll get to hang out with Andrew, right, when he's in Tallahassee. You guys going to get along?
Well,
we always get along.
He'll have his computer in hand, and I'll have my beer in hand. So we'll see how that works out.
Oh well, all right, that's fun.
I'll make sure to keep it in the cover then.
Beautiful. All right, Carlos Pineda, Southern Pigskin. We appreciate you for taking the time. Find you on Twitter where?
Carlos F. Pineda.
Beautiful. All right, sir. Thanks for the work. We'll catch you on the other side.
I'll give you mine real quick.
Yep.
27-10, Florida State.
Ooh. Knowles win by 17. I'll take that. That's Andrew Melnick. He'll be at the game, FSU Miami next week, as Carlos Pineda will be for Southern Pigskin. We'll have coverage here on ESPN 1080 again. 1:30 pregame next Saturday, FSU Miami, 3:30 kickoff. Gene Deckerhoff will be on the hand. I believe Buckman might be producing that. It's either him or Brittany. Either way, you'll be in good hands from a production standpoint. Right, Buckman?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So for everybody here at ESPN 1080, I'm Eric Lopez. This has been an ESPN 1080 Insider Special Miami, Florida State preview here on ESPN 1080, The Team.